Vocational guidance counselors. In this video, I'll talk about vocational guidance counselors and career coaches and how they can help you decide what to do with your life. If you want to find and nurture your ideal vocation, hobby, or occupation, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you know whenever a new video comes out. Also, if you like this video, remember to hit the like button and share it with your friends. Don't know what to do with your life? Can't decide on a major, or maybe you just want to change your career? You feel like you made a mistake? No problem. By the end of this video, you'll know how a vocational guidance counselor can actually help you make a good transition to something that you might actually enjoy doing, and what exactly you should be looking for in a good vocational counselor so you don't actually waste your money and find a more fulfilling long-term career path for you. So first, what is a vocational guidance counselor? These are professionals who actually help people decide what careers are good for them. Many career guidance counselors work at colleges and universities, but there are also others out there that actually help people who are already working and have been working for many years, or maybe they're mid-career professionals, or maybe they're just beginning their careers. Anyways, this varies by the type of person that you are and where you are in your journey. But at the end of the day, basically what a vocational guidance counselor does is help you see what will be something that will be a better fit given your talents, your background, and your interests. Also, before we move forward, if you're still in college and you're trying to figure out what kind of major you want to take, or maybe you're thinking about what trade school to go to, for example, your university may very well already cover these services in your tuition. So basically, you might want to find out if in your university you can actually get a counselor for free, since you're kind of like basically already paying for it. So make sure you don't waste that opportunity and see what kind of guidance you can get. Okay, so now that we know what a vocational guidance counselor is, how do we know that we're actually hiring someone that's good or someone that can actually potentially help us achieve what we want to achieve? Well, the very first step is making sure that they have a very robust diagnostic process. Now, some of you might be thinking, what do you mean by a diagnostic? Well, think about anytime you go to the doctor. They probably run some tests to figure out, okay, so what is the problem? What is the source of your pain? What is it that's causing this problem with your health, right? Because if they just go ahead and they tell you, oh, just take this solution, take this aspirin, or take this, or go walk, or do this, and they don't even know what the problem actually is, they could end up not doing anything to help you, or potentially even making the problem bigger. Now, some of you might be thinking, okay, Emil, but how does that make sense in this world, in the world of picking an occupation or a major to do? Well, think about it this way. Let's say you go to your college counselor, or you talk to a potential career coach, and the questions that they ask in their diagnostic process only goes as far as, okay, so what classes have you taken so far? Okay, and what classes do you want to take in the future? And then once you've told them, they're like, okay, these are my recommendations, and that's it. Bye-bye. Well, what is the problem with this? The problem with this is that you yourself may think you know what you want to do, but that may not actually pan out to be something that you enjoy. And that's why we see today many people who actually end up in careers they didn't actually enjoy or did not really like from the beginning or while they were doing them. That's why we see a lot of dissatisfaction at work currently. Because we are very bad at knowing what we want ahead of time, even though that's something that's important in the diagnostic process. So let's say, for example, that you do that and you say, oh yeah, I just want to take more science subjects. And then you go into it, but then you figure out that you don't actually like science jobs after you've graduated, right? So that's a big no-no. So how could you have avoided that? Well, maybe the counselor could have figured out, like, okay, what kind of career do you want to have? Are you sure you want to do that? And then maybe taking some tests to see if your aptitudes and what you really like and your strengths really lie in those scientific fields, for example. Similarly, if you're already working at a job, right? If you go to a career coach and all they say is, oh, it's $200 or whatever their fee is for, let's say, an hour or whichever payment plan they use, and then all they do in their diagnostic process is say, oh, what kind of job are you looking for? Or, oh, are you looking to just stay in your industry? Or, oh, like, right? And then they say, oh, you just have to send more resumes, or you only have to like do this or do that, without really asking that much about you and what you really want and what are some of your values and other things. Well, that's probably not going to work out unless they are people who are very experienced and they really know what they're doing, so they can quickly pinpoint the type of client that you are and really add a lot of value. That's great if that's the kind of person they are. If not, well, that's not going to work out. So what's one way for you to determine that? Well, maybe talk to some of their previous clients. Does this person have good testimonials? Is this someone who's been doing this for a while? Are they good at what they do? And if not, well, and they have a very bad diagnostic process, well, they'll give you an idea of like, okay, maybe I'm not going to get the best results if I just stay with this person. And at the end of the day, I mean, if you don't do a good diagnostic, how do you and your counselor know that you are not trying to go for a career just because you feel like your parents or your peers are pressuring you, and not because that's really what's going to be the best for you and ultimately what's going to really lead you to success and fulfillment at work? Okay, so enough about this. So what are some of the things that you need to cover in a good diagnostic process? We're going to go very deep into this in this video. We're not going to cover everything, and we're not really going to do it super in-depth, but we're going to focus a lot on the diagnostic process here. So the first thing that you need to focus on is strengths and weaknesses. All right, so something like strengths and weaknesses might sound basic, but this is very important. For example, okay, like, are you a numbers person? Are you a words type of person? And perhaps even more specifically, let's put some concrete examples of things that you can look into. What is your communication style? Do you know what your communication style is? Because unless you're doing something like trading or very few professions that really don't really need that much communication, and it's got to be very specific cases in which you won't be communicating with other people, you really need to know what's your style, what's your strength. So for example, a good way to figure this out might be to take Tony Robbins' free test that's called DISC Profile, DISC. You can find it online. I believe it's free. You can take it. And that will actually let you know, okay, like, are you more of an extroverted or introverted person? And beyond that, are you more focused on dealing with people, or are you more focused on dealing with tasks? Me personally, I am more extroverted, and I am more oriented towards dealing with tasks. So instead of like talking with people all day, I'm really good at actually seeing a process and a lot of things that need to be done and really getting those things done, really destroying them, and doing so in an extroverted fashion. So that's why I'm actually playing to my strengths here, like by making videos, because these are things that I don't have to depend on someone else. I don't have to talk to anyone. I can just create an outline, film it, and do my thing. And I can do it very well, very efficiently, because that's who I am. And I can be very extroverted at it as well, which is something that I like, more than just being kind of like shut down and not talking or doing anything like that. I like talking, if you haven't noticed, by the way. So what this will do for you is that if you take that test, it will tell you what your style is, your communication style is for your natural, what comes out natural for you, and that's the one you need to pay most attention to. And also the adapted one, which is what we've learned to do to kind of like fit in with society and whatnot. Well, your real strengths are your natural talents. So basically what it says is your natural style. That's probably going to be the most important one, especially if you have one that is very vague relative to the others, which definitely is my case. So in that case, how is that going to help you? Well, if you have that, that's going to help both you and your counselor figure out, okay, like, what are some of the professions in which you will be naturally playing to your strengths most of the time, while at the same time diminishing or reducing the downsides of some of your weaknesses. To give you a concrete example, maybe you are a conscientious type, who is basically someone who is more introverted and likes dealing more with tasks than with people. In that case, maybe you will be better suited for a job like data processing or database management, perhaps, or something more in the numerical fields, or something that's more like task-oriented, in which you don't actually have to be very extroverted. So that's something that's going to play to your strengths. Of course, I just gave two very simple examples, and there is a lot of possibilities for someone with this particular communication style, but that's something that's actually going to play to who you are already. And speaking of who you are, we can also go into figuring out what your personality is. Now, I know many people out there love personality tests, especially online, and one of the famous ones is the 16 personality types from Carl Jung. But really, you should be focusing on tests that are a little bit more robust from a scientific point of view. And one of the most robust tests out there is the 5-factor test, 5-factor, which is about your personality dimensions. Basically, what that test does is it takes 5 important dimensions that make your personality, and it creates a continuum in each of them. So for example, one dimension is being easygoing versus being very organized and very structured. So that one dimension, on one extreme, you can be super organized, nothing gets past you, and you're super strict. And on the other extreme, you might be super easygoing, you never organize anything, maybe you arrive late to every social gathering or every responsibility you have or every meeting, right? So those are two extremes. So what do you do with this test? What that test does is it gives you an idea of how you are, it helps you predict how you're going to behave in different environments. So for example, if you're too easygoing, you might not do well in an environment in which you need to be incredibly organized. So let's use the previous example, the one about like data processing, something that requires a lot of minutia, that you need to be very nuanced, very organized, and maybe you're too easygoing. You don't really pay a lot of attention to details maybe, and that might not be a good fit for you. Why is that so important? Because most very successful people will tell you, like, culture is very, very important for you to actually do well at your job. Like most people, they join companies, but they leave their bosses, so to speak. In other words, they leave the environment if it's not somewhere where they feel like they can grow and they can do well. And one very important part of it is those 5 personality dimensions. So if you've never heard of this before, I will tell you, just look it up online. You will see a lot more information. You may even see some watered down tests that you could potentially take for free. Another type of test you can take is the aptitudes test, specifically for occupations, right? So what this is going to do is it's going to basically see what are some of your interests and some of the tasks or abilities that you feel you're more likely to do well in. And what this will do is it will narrow the field of possibilities so that you don't have like all of these potential things that you can do, but rather a few, maybe a handful, that the test will say, okay, like according to this, you seem to be more confident about your skill in that will be valuable in this profession. Like for example, maybe you can be valuable as a researcher because you like being very focused, very putting a lot of attention to detail and really investigating and getting to the end of it, to the end of things, and you actually like what that means and how that makes you feel. And speaking about how things make you feel, another thing that you need to take into account if you're doing a really thorough diagnostic process is your personal core values. For example, do you actually really care about helping other people who are in need? Do you care maybe about being the most achieved person in a room? Or do you care more about scientific discoveries and about creating new knowledge? Perhaps you're like me and you really care more about the economic well-being of yourself and your family without necessarily having to be the best person in the room or anything like that. The list goes on and on. But at the end of the day, it's really important for you to be very clear on what your core values are so that you don't start doing an occupation that goes against those values. For example, if you're the kind of person who really cares about being well economically and the jobs that you have are on social work and stuff like that or nonprofits and you don't really care that much about that, then that may actually make you feel like crap because you're not fulfilling your need for being well off economically. And basically, on your day-to-day job, you're doing things that you don't enjoy, things that make you feel miserable. Because to someone else, your job might be perfect. They might say, oh, I get to help all these people. I actually get paid for doing that, which I really like, right? But for you, it might feel like, oh, like I'm not really like being able to provide well for my family in the way I would like to. I like helping people, yes, but that's not really something that's like a major priority for me. In another case, perhaps you're the kind of person who has traditional values, and you really care about institutions like marriage. You care about being honest. You care about doing business the old way, kind of like sticking to your word, being professional, kind of like having a good reputation, all of those things. And maybe you are in an industry where doing that might be difficult. I don't know. Maybe you're in politics, and you have to, depending on where you are, obviously, maybe you have to be more shrewd about how you do things and what you communicate, what you don't communicate. And that may actually make you feel a little bit less fulfilled, or you wouldn't feel good with yourself about doing things the way that's demanded from you because of the occupation you're in. So this is very important. You cannot be fulfilled if you're not living your life according to your values. So this is something else that you need to have very clear if you're really being through with your diagnostic process, so you can come up with the best thing possible. Remember, in any process, you have two things. You have what you put in and what you get out. And if you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. So similarly, the more in-depth that the diagnostic process is, the more things you take into account, and when you put them all together, the more likely you are to come up with something that's really going to work for you in a long-term fashion. Now, comment below if you know someone who has an incredible job, but they feel miserable. All right, so what else do you need for the diagnostic process? Well, how about your background? What's your experience? What are some of your academic achievements, right? Because at the end of the day, if you want to make a change in career or go into a different major, there are going to be different requirements, different qualifications that you will need in order to make that shift. So if you want to do that, then it's very important for us to know, for you and your counselor to know, what do we have to work with? Like, for example, maybe you've decided that you really like pharmacy because you like having the knowledge, you like mixing different substances, you like to be knowledgeable about things, and you also like helping people. And this is kind of like a good occupation for you based on all the other diagnostic things that we've done, the aptitude test and all that stuff. But maybe you haven't even finished high school, or maybe you are in a completely different career path. Maybe you did economics, maybe you did finance, and then you will have to go through a lot of training to get into that pharmacy, into that pharmacy job. Potentially, if you're in the U.S. or in some other developed countries, you might need to get a PhD in pharmacy before you can actually perform that job. So a good question here will be, okay, what do we have to work with? Do you actually have to get a PhD to do what you want to do, or can you actually do it in a different way, right? Like maybe you can talk about it online, or build a business around it, or do something else within a pharmacy that's not necessarily that won't necessarily require all of those qualifications, right? Depending on where you are. And you need to figure out with your counselor if that's something that's okay to you, given your values, or if you're willing to put in the work and the energy and the money and the investment required to get those qualifications and become that which you want to become. And finally, what are some of your interests? When I say interests, I don't mean like, oh, like what is your passion right now? Like what is the trend that's just coming up? Like, oh yeah, social media now and whatnot. I mean more of like, what are the types of activities that you actually enjoy doing? Do you like doing managerial work, or do you like actually producing the products and services that people buy? Or do you like being the person that promotes or sells those products and services? This is important because according to some of the research in the field, more important than the industry you're in is the function that you're doing. In other words, the activity that you're doing in terms of enjoyment, right? So for example, let's say that you've always enjoyed building things. Ever since you were a little person, you like building structures with Lego toys, right? Like you like building stuff. Then you went to school because you wanted to build a career. Later, you picked a competitive job because you wanted to impress your peers. And now maybe you're a mid-career professional, or you're a few years in and you're thinking more about like, okay, I just want to pay my bills and have a little bit more money on the side to have some fun. Or maybe I really only care about potentially covering things for me and my family. So basically what this means is that the activity that you enjoy, your interest when it comes to the activity, doesn't really change that much across time if you know how to measure it well And that's something that's super important because that's what's going to keep you sustainable and fulfilled in the activity that you're performing or the activities you're performing. While your interest in terms of why you're doing that action can change, because in reality what you're looking at is two things. You're looking at the interest, what's the activity that makes you feel good about doing it, even if you don't get paid for it, versus the rewards, the why you're doing it, or why you think you're doing it, right? The rewards that you get from doing that. So in this case, maybe it was the recognition from your parents or your peers at some point, the reward that you were getting, but then that changed, and then it was just about, oh, I just want to pay my bills and have some money on the side so I can have some fun for myself. That's a different reward. But all along the way, you were doing what you like to do, which was building stuff. You were building a career, you were building a position, then maybe you started building your own business or want to start building your own business. And when you were a kid, you were building stuff like toys, houses, clubs, all those kinds of things. So it's important to determine what is the activity that you really enjoy doing, that you really get a kick out of doing, regardless of the rewards, because that's gonna help you figure out, okay, what are the occupations that allow you to do that kind of activity, even if it's in different industries or in a different kind of way. So for example, like, okay, I like, let's say you like selling stuff, right? If you like selling stuff or persuading people, then you can work in many different industries, but you're always kind of like doing the same thing. Does that make sense? If not, comment below and maybe we can clarify that. Okay, so when we put all of this diagnostic process together, basically what it states is that what we want to do is find an occupation that will allow you to focus on the activity that interests you, that also plays to your strengths while minimizing the downsides of your weaknesses so that you can do well at it, but that also is done in an environment that will allow you to flourish and allow your personality to help you even further enhance your goals there. And doing all of this by feeling awesome because you're actually living your values. Does that make sense? The activity that plays to your strengths in an environment that allows those strengths in your personality to flourish, and also doing so in a way that's according to your values, okay? This isn't something that's super comprehensive, but it's kind of like to give you an idea of what is a more robust diagnostic process that can help you figure out, okay, like, am I doing this right, or is this counselor just someone who's kind of like just here because that's their job, that they didn't even like pick a job they like themselves, right? All right, so how's that for a diagnostic process? Now, at this point, most counselors will feel that they've done their job. If they've done some big diagnostic process like the one we've discussed here, well, you've done the bulk of the work. But most counselors will just feel okay giving you a few recommendations and that's it. Well, that's not the end of it, right? Because you still need to choose one of the options. So how do you do this? You gotta try them out. You can't just say, oh yeah, I want to be a pharmacist, I'm gonna like put everything in, when you knew you could also have been maybe like a nurse or another kind of therapist or health professional, right? So it's good for you to have a handful of options that you and your counselor have worked on, so that you can actually try them out in a low risk way, right? Maybe spend a day with someone who's already doing it, research online what it's life really like, try doing it yourself, and then seeing like, okay, this actually feels good, or this actually feels better than I thought it will, or oh, I thought it will be this way, I don't feel like I really like this that much, and that's great. Also, what if you don't like any of the choices you guys came up with once you actually try them? Well, you probably missed something and you need to go back to the drawing board and try something else. That's why, because most people don't usually try that many things. So that's why many people are also kind of like lost in the sense of like, what should I do? Well, you haven't tried enough things, so you don't actually know what you like. The only real true test is you're doing it and you love it, right? But obviously you cannot try every single thing out there, so that's why we do the diagnostic process, to help you arrive or narrow down the choices and try those that are higher probability for you. Cool, so let's say that you already arrived at one option that's good for you. Is that it? Well, no. A really good, at least a counselor that cares about you getting results, will also help you create an action plan. For example, we already spoke about what qualifications do you need. Did you decide to actually go and get them? Well, how are you going to do that? How difficult, how time consuming is that? What are the daily actions and activities that you have to do to make sure that you actually achieve your goals? I don't know, in a year or in 2 years or in however long it takes to get those qualifications and actually get into a position in which you're doing what you would love to do. Also, what obstacles are there in the way that will not allow you to do those daily activities or will make it difficult or close to impossible to actually do one of those activities? These are very important things, but since this video was more focused on the diagnostic part, which is the one that's easier for you to figure out, like if you go and talk with a counselor, you can just ask them, hey, what is your diagnostic process? If they don't even know what you're talking about, it's like, holy shit, like, how do you usually work with your clients, right? That's another way of asking, oh, yeah, we do this, we do that, and then you can get a feel for, okay, how knowledgeable are they? How good will this process be? Will this actually help me find what I want, right? But just before we go, there is another very important thing you need to figure out, and that's that if you want to get results, you need accountability. What is accountability? Well, basically, you can have the best action plan, you can have figured out what exactly is it you want to do, but you're not going to get there unless you actually take those daily actions and you actually commit yourself to doing those. So someone that actually cares about you will be more interested in asking you to make, I don't know, weekly reports or every once in a month check in with you. Hey, how are you doing with this and that? Did you do what you said you will do, right? If you cannot do that with your counselor, you could do it with your family or a friend or someone else who can keep you accountable towards doing those actions that will actually take you where you want to go. So now you know what a vocational guidance counselor is and what a real career coaching process should look like. If you like this video, hit the like button below and remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know whenever a new video comes out. Also, if you would like to see more information like this or you would like me to go more in depth with something or you have another question in general, just comment below and we'll get back to you.